I am your host, Christina George, and looking forward to bringing you another amazing show tonight. I have to say, I've been gone the last few weeks. A lot of stuff has been going on, and I had to have some reruns. And, I have received all of the emails and social media messages from all of the listeners, saying that they couldn't wait till I was back. They've been missing the show. And I want to say thank you, because without my listeners, the show would be nothing. And, every week the numbers grow. I just have so many amazing people that, have become family, become part of the show. So, as I said, I am very, very appreciative of all of the people that give me all of the support. And but I do want to give some updates. Most people who do follow my show also follow me on social media and have known that I am officially a grandma again. My daughter delivered a 6-pound, 4-ounce little baby boy named Kalani. And so for the past few weeks, I have not been able to really just enjoy being a grandma again, because right away in labor, after about 21 hours, we found out that my daughter was having some complications. And so she had to go in for an emergency C-section. And when I watched my grandson born, right away they pulled him out, and being a nurse, or used to be a nurse, I looked and saw that he was blue and he was not crying. So I got a little concerned, didn't want to freak out my daughter, and so immediately they showed him and then went directly to another room, the resuscitation room, to try to bring him around. And as they worked on him, I have to say, I was pretty stressing. And it was amazing. All of a sudden, I saw this bright light come in the room and almost engulf him and the doctors that were working on him. And I remember seeing it and thinking, oh my gosh, is this the end? Is he going to pass away? I was really worried. And right about that moment, I said, Kalani, please give me a cry, let them know you're okay. The light got very, very bright, and the next thing I know, he took this big breath and let out this scream. And from that point, it started to pink up, and everything was, getting better. We were able to take him back to Mom, let her check him out and see him and stuff, and he had been doing good. My daughter had to stay in the hospital for 4 days with the baby, and so they could watch him and her. So we came home, was home for, I think, 2 days, and I noticed that my daughter's incision was swelling. It didn't look right, so I took her in to the doctor, and they found that she had an abscess and was hemorrhaging into her abdomen, and she had basically was bleeding to death. They had to do an emergency surgery. And this time they were going to have to open her up, and they were going to have to leave her completely open and just pack the wound and continue to do it because she had gotten so sick. They didn't want her to get septic again. So that is what I've been doing for the past 2 weeks. She then got out of the hospital, and the baby was having some respiratory issues, so he went back in. So we've been in and out of the hospital, but I am happy to announce that both Mom and baby are now home. They're both doing great. I got some really strong children, and my daughter is definitely one of them. They are definitely like their mother, and my grandkids, too. They're very strong and very, very gifted. So I truly look forward to, when they get a little older, talking to me, being able to educate them on the spirit world and give them all of the advice and help and education that I didn't have growing up being a psychic. And that brings me to my guest tonight. So, as many people know, I bring on all different types of guests, all different walks of life, different stories. But I really, really like for people to be able to connect with my guests. And this time is not going to be any different. Um, we're going to be talking a little bit, I think, and this will help a lot. I get a lot of my listeners do have abilities. They always seem to have questions. When I explain my experiences, people really connect to me because they say, wow, I thought I was the only one who had those kind of experiences and those kind of things that happened to me. And so I always love to bring other psychics on my show so that, they can see that you're so not alone. There are so many of us out there. And my guest tonight, Dawn Haden, has been able to see and communicate with spirits since she was 2. For me, the earliest memory I have is around 4. But even in talking to Dawn today, I noticed how much we actually had in common. So we're going to do some talking with Dawn tonight. We're going to see, kind of where this journey has led her, what she's gone through. We are going to offer some readings tonight. So if you need a reading or you might have a question or need some advice, feel free to call. I do want to, explain, though, before all of that, because the one thing with readings is, for most psychics, including myself, the best way to do a reading is face-to-face in person. The second would be over the phone or like video chat so that you can connect with their voice or energy so that you can pick up things about them. Depending on, how strong of a psychic, each person is, and there are all different types of psychic abilities, so not everybody has all of them. They're able to do readings. Dawn has done them. She is, willing to do some readings tonight if she can. She doesn't do a lot of phone readings or, video readings. She usually does them in person. So if for some reason she's not picking up on something, hopefully I will, and we can, help you out. So the call-in number tonight is 607-349-0410. And our producer, Tiffany, will be happy to connect you, and we'll get those questions answered. Sometimes, we have abilities, and we might just have a question. You might not even want a reading. You might just have a comment or a question or just want to tell your story. And I absolutely love to have the callers call in and, share information as well. So feel free to do that if you'd like. I also want to say hello to all of the people in chat and that are loyal there every week, and really appreciate all of your love and support. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and start the show. And Dawn, are you there?
I am here.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
I'm so excited. I've heard so many good things about you. This is just really cool.
Oh, thank you so much. I always appreciate that. I mean, I have been doing Paranormal Connections now for about 3.5 years. And
wow.
I'll tell you, it's definitely been interesting. I can remember when I first started the show, I probably had, at the very start, I had about 500 live listeners when I first started, and now we're talking, in the tens of thousands, every week, and it grows every single week. So it's amazing. So I sometimes, don't really know what people think about the show. So to hear the feedback, it's always amazing. So I probably more happy to have you on the show than the other way, but, either way, I really welcome you and appreciate you taking the time to come talk to us tonight.
Well, still 500 people. That's pretty impressive.
Well, now it seems like, it's like comparing, 1 to 1,000, so, I mean, it's grown so much over the years that it's changed. That I ended up now, I've got 3 shows. I've got, this show, which was kind of encompassed everything paranormal, and so many people, wanted more content as far as, the paranormal people wanted just paranormal stuff, and then, so I figured, okay, I'll use Paranormal Connections for the paranormal stuff, I'll use aliens, UFOs, and beyond for, all the other areas of the paranormal, and then I've got the darker side of the paranormal that I do bi-weekly, that I co-host with Sean Austin, and we, on that show, focus more on the darker, stuff that we encounter and stories and stuff. So it's total of 3 shows. They're all, great shows, and the following and the support has been amazing. So it's definitely been a long haul, but, all the hard work has definitely paid off, and I absolutely, love what I do. It's definitely different, from, I'm 48, and when I was born, I think you and I were talking about this a little earlier, having psychic abilities, growing up, like you said, and I say this all the time on the show, did seem almost like a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. When you were growing up, did you have the support and education about what was going on, around you? Did anybody explain? Because that's the hardest part was for me, is that there really was no information on psychic abilities. And growing up Catholic, it was taboo to even think about talking about this stuff. So I really didn't have that. Was it the same for you?
Yeah, I mean, my parents sent me to the Catholic school for, all through elementary, and we had the nuns, and it's still so crazy to me when I think, of course, as a child, you don't think about it, but everyone's belief in God, which you can't see, but yet the paranormal was considered, devil's work, or I've heard every comment.
Yeah.
Especially growing up, and my dad was an Irish cop, and so there was no such thing as anything paranormal. I had no support whatsoever. I think my mother tried to understand, but it was the 70s. What were you going to do? Not that I'm trying to date myself, but
well, that's true. But it does really, affect every area of your life, because it is almost like living 2 different lives. You've got you got one. Go ahead.
I was. Long story short, I was born without hearing. They never figured out why. To this day, we don't know why, but, I sometimes wonder if that was the cause, but when I was, very little, my mother said I would just basically, mumble to whoever, things that weren't there, or would, sit and rock, which I guess you would maybe associate with a form of autism these days, but that wasn't the case. I think it was just, I was hearing things and seeing things and trying to, express myself, why am I seeing this person? Why am I hearing these voices? And it was just, I think that back then blown off was, geez, Dawn can't hear, so maybe she's a little slow to learn, or, whatever the case may be. Who knows what they thought back then.
Right. Well, and not only that, but, as a child, when you talk about things and all of your friends have been told that none of this stuff exists, it's not like how it is now where you've got all these TV shows and everything. So you might feel at some point comfortable to tell your friends, but you would notice that once you told them, you probably didn't have friends for very long.
No, I was it really is a cliche, but I was such the outcast. I was a loner. I literally, here comes the wah-wah story, but I literally had no friends. I was severely bullied, and, because they didn't get it.
Oh, yeah.
And, and now I look back, I'm like, well, why should they have gotten it? It was the 70s. No one knew about this.
Absolutely.
And, I would, if I did, come upon a friend, I would usually end up saying something that scared them or that didn't make sense, and bam, that was it. Next day, you know, how mean girls can be, you know, I throw stuff at me and, you know, Dawn is this and Dawn is that, you know, and again, the typical cliche, you know, strange child. And I just feel so lucky for kids these days that are growing up in this generation that don't, I mean, not saying they don't all have to deal with that, but, you know, and then to have a father, and he was a great dad, and you know, he's been gone several years now, but he, you know, he didn't get it, and he didn't like it, and he got very angry at me and kind of, you know, took it out on me, like, what, you know, what is wrong with my daughter?
Right.
This is not right. I mean, she's, you know, and I overheard many conversations. She's, you know, she's a freak. What's wrong with her? You know, not so nice language.
Right.
You know, and I don't hold that against him anymore because I kind of like to think, you know, where he is, he probably gets it now. But, you know, I had no support whatsoever from anybody. And, you know, I think that, you know, it really does affect how you grow up and how you view people. And I can't really say it really got much better as an adult. I mean, even through early 20s, I mean, it still wasn't a cool thing, or whatever word you want to put on there. You know, it still wasn't okay.
Isn't it funny and interesting how much times have changed? You know,
it blows my mind.
Yeah, you know, they put TV, you know, at the beginning, everybody would say none of this stuff existed, right? And for those of us who do have this gift, like, you know, it's like trying to live in two different worlds, the reality of everybody else and the reality that's your reality, you know, and it's how to fit in between. And then all of a sudden, you know, and this shows you how much we are manipulated by television and entertainment and things like that. So they start putting shows out, paranormal shows. You know, I can still remember when I started investigating, and it was still like really on the under. There really were no per se groups around. You know, it was just if somebody knew somebody who knew you that, you know, you would help them. And all of a sudden they start putting the paranormal shows on, and we've got hundreds of thousands of groups. And, you know, and not only groups, but all of a sudden, you know, you started seeing all these people that coming out of the woodwork like, hey, look at me, I'm a psychic. I was blown away because I'm telling you, even up to 12 years ago when I really became in the public eye, I fought tooth and nail to not take on the name and the title of a psychic. It's just like, you're not going to give me that title. They're going to think I'm some scammer with a crystal ball, and I'm going to take all their money and tell them they got demons and things like that. You know, because that's what they were considered. Psychics were considered scammers, you know, and people that were going to scam you out of all your money and things like that. So that's not what I wanted. And eventually when I was with, you know, started with the group, because I worked with them, you know, and the general manager happened to write a lot of articles on everything that we did, he gave me the title, and, you know, it took me a long time to really become comfortable, not with what I do, but just holding that title. And I look at people now, and everybody's, like, waving their hands, and you're like, put the spotlight on me, I'm a psychic, and it blows me away, you know, and a lot of them, the thing is that they are absolutely frauds. They are not psychics. They do not have abilities. And I'm trying to wrap my mind around why somebody would want to fake being a psychic other than for the fact of...
It's a very hip thing to do right now. Yeah.
Right. But who really want to do that? Being a psychic, you come under such scrutiny as it is.
Oh, of course. And I understand that. I really do, because, you know, if I hadn't grown up the way I had, and I had no experiences, I would probably think it was all a bunch of, crap myself, to be quite honest. I mean, I really would. And again, sometimes as I'm talking to people, I equate it with, someone walking into, your workplace and saying, Elvis is standing outside and he's really alive, you're going to be like, you're full of it.
Right.
And
right.
So I do get it, and it's taken me a long time to accept that it's okay if people don't believe me, or they are against it. I really haven't really come out and admitted really until the last 2 years. And again, I'm, certainly not in my 20s anymore, but honestly, it really wasn't until I met Lorraine Warren about 1.5 to 2 years ago. And I remember growing up, of course, the Warrens had their books out and, their little bits here and there. Mm-hmm. And I worshiped them, where, other kids were worshiping, Star Wars and what have you. And so when I finally got to meet her and hear her story, as old as I am, and, she took my hand and she says, "You're so much like me." She grew up Catholic. She grew up being bullied. She grew up no one believing her. And she looked at me and she goes, "It's okay. Just use your gift for the good." And it really wasn't until it was such an epiphany for me to go, "Oh my God, it is okay. I'm not a freak, and if people don't accept it, that's okay too."
Right. Absolutely. Like right now, probably for like the last, 4 or 5 years, I've been mentoring children and teens. I've got kids as young as 5 years old all the way up to 17, and as well as adults. But I really wanted to focus on the teens, because I remember how hard it was just growing up as a teen. Mm-hmm. And having these abilities. Like, it was just, to me, was hell. Like, that's where the whole cursing comes in, because it was so hard being young to try to even understand any of this. Once again, there was no information like there is now. I couldn't find anything, any kind of books or somebody to mentor me or anything. I think my very first psychic that I knew about and I went to go and see happened to be Sylvia Brown. And it was back in a time where, kind of the beginning of her career as well. And she was starting to get some publicity because she was going on Good Morning San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And once a month, and she was, the psychic that would come and give readings. And she was doing little psychic fairs. And so you would go in and you'd pay anywhere from $10 to $40 to have a short reading with a psychic. And I thought, oh, okay, well, let me check this out. Because when I was younger, I actually thought I must be a witch, because that's all I really could find in books was like witchcraft.
I thought the same thing. That's so funny. I actually picked up a book when I was, I'm going to say 16 or 17 at our tiny little bookstore. And I'm looking through it. And that really was all I could find. And I'm like, oh, my God. I'm like, I think that's what I am. Mm-hmm. Yep. And then, this may be too much information, but I won't go into specifics, but there was also a thing in the book, and it said, witches, way back when, in, the Salem days and before, had a third marking on their body. Mm-hmm. And it's a little personal, so I won't say what it is, but right. And I had that, so I thought for sure, oh my God, that I must be a witch.
Yep.
So I remember going through a phase where I thought, oh, my God, maybe I should start getting a cauldron and maybe start, I don't know. I was just so confused.
Me too. I looked and I'm like, I am a witch. And then the more I got into it, I'm like, well, no, this really isn't. I don't know if this is me. And then, like I said, I had seen Sylvia, and, she was communicating, and I was like, oh, okay, well, she's like me. So I literally, I was a teenager, and I think probably around 17 too, and I literally drove to San Francisco, which was a few hours away, so that I could go to this psychic fair. And I spent all of my money, and I must have, I literally got readings, I think, from 5 different psychics, because Sylvia was the most expensive, so I said, okay, let me try a few of these other ones first. And I will tell you, there was literally not one, not even Sylvia. The information they gave me was so completely off.
Oh, yes.
That I was like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. So here again, there is no help. I was like, this is horrible. Like, what in the hell is going on with, my life? And many of us who have abilities that grow up, we felt so different than everybody else, and such an outcast that, we did kind of, in a way, stick out like a sore thumb because we were, so antisocial. But, you really, especially in the teen years, it does cause a lot of depression and things, and it makes us a absolute perfect target for, demonic attack, attachment, things like that, because there's so much going on, you don't understand it. I ended up with an attachment that almost caused me to take my life. And so I always feared things like that. Did you, growing up, ever encounter any darker things as you were going along?
Yes, I did, actually, which brings me to something you said earlier, which brings me to a question that I should ask you, because I have tried to research the information on this particular situation that happened, and I can't really find anything, so maybe you'll have an idea. Now, long story short, when I was 11, I started babysitting for a particular family, and I was literally the only person that could get to babysit, and I'll give you just a quick rundown of some stuff that was going on in the house, and I really feel that this spirit, whatever you want to call it, was attached to the little boy. The little boy was 3, and they had a newborn baby. And I think now, what were they insane letting an 11-year-old babysit for such little kids? But anyway,
they did, though.
they did. And things, the first time, now I had been warned by a family member that there was some funky stuff going on. And again, it wasn't really talked about. It was just called weird things, like things floating through the air, voices coming from nowhere. So I go there, and first night, little boy comes downstairs, and he says, the man in my closet moved my bed. So I, of course, not thinking much of it, I go upstairs, and his bed was across the room. There's no way. I mean, it took, everything for me to move this bed. This kept happening all night. So then I would hear, little running footsteps. I assumed it was a little 3-year-old.
Right.
Well, it turns out it wasn't. So I peered around a corner, and God is my witness, I saw, and the best way to describe him was I saw a little man about, I would say, 3 feet tall, almost like a little person, and he almost had the resemblance of a leprechaun. It's the only way I can describe him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he ran up the stairs, and I heard giggling. Well, you can imagine I was, I had never seen anything particularly like this before. I ran up the stairs after it, which was crazy, but I did. The little boy was sound asleep. The closet door slammed, and it was this little being that had run into the closet. Now, this continued on for about 5 years. The man in his closet, and he was, it would literally come out, pennies would be flying around his bedroom. So I have still yet to figure out what this little being was.
Yeah, so there are so many different ones. I mean, there are like little like trolls. I mean, there are so many different types of little creatures and types of things that are around. I'll tell you, what I do get when you're telling me this story is that, number one, that they definitely had a portal in their house, which was probably the closet, which is their doorway in and out.
And the thing is that they had moved in this 5-year period of time that I babysat for them. They moved 4 times. Mm-hmm. And every single time it was the closet was the center. And I my guesstimate was maybe, being, a little boy, maybe the closet was the place to hide. Or, I mean, it never did anything harmful,
right?
Except for throw things around, and which there were many witnesses to, things floating through the air, toys being thrown around the room. He'd move things, but what really got me is one night, the baby was just a newborn. We all know newborns do not move themselves when they sleep. The baby had been moved into different positions, and the blankets had been very neatly smoothed out to cover the baby, and that's what I found disturbing, was the fact that it would go in and affect this newborn baby, which to me was terrifying. Then years later, the same family had me come to their house, probably maybe, I'm going to say about 20 years ago. And now little boy's grown up, and the mom, who, I love dearly, said, will you come to the house and see if there's still anything? And there was. And so I still have yet to figure out what that was. I'm like, what was I seeing? I mean...
Well, Lorraine in chat, which is a good friend of mine, a very, very talented and gifted woman as well, and she says that sounds like an elf, which to me it sounds very familiar too. And the elves love pennies, and they're very mischievous. They're not there to hurt anybody. But a lot of times, and what I feel is that he was very attached to the young child. So yes. When they are attached, and I really feel that the parents were experiencing a lot of really, really strange things, which kind of freaked them out, which is why they were moving. But unfortunately, they saw that no matter where they moved, it wasn't the house or the houses. It was actually what was attached to the child that is following them. So it's like, they decide to move, and the Lord goes, sure, I'll go, I'm going to, let's go, where are we going? And they just adapt. And a lot of times, these things use, again, the closet as kind of like portals to come and go, that had stay in the dark. And you'll also notice that a lot of very, very young children usually are afraid of their closets, or if they see something, it's in the closet. And,
yes.
Again, we have to remember, and I say this to everybody all the time, although there are many of us that are very, very, gifted psychics as adults, and it never leaves us, we are not like the unique chosen ones, like some people say. At a time that they're 5 years old and enter school, if they have not been educated or taught to embrace this and that it's not a bad thing, a lot of kids will block it out because they're told so much it doesn't exist that they shut these abilities down. And there are others of us that are so strongly connected that we can't shut them down, even if we wanted to.
Right.
So, people say, oh, I don't have psychic abilities. But I'm like, oh, yes, you do. And, I'm like, have you ever, got that weird feeling in the pit of your stomach, like when you're about to do something or you meet somebody and you just feel like something is off about them? They're like, yep. I'm like, yep, there's some psychic abilities. Have you ever been around somebody and they're very angry and all of a sudden you feel very angry or emotional? And they're like, yeah, oh, well, that's ability. But, when we say psychic, right away, again, there's this, stigma to it where everybody feels that they have the idea of what a psychic is. And the very first question I get from thousands of people I've met over the years, when they would find out I was a psychic, they would always give me this really strange look, like where one eyebrow goes up and they're like, oh, you're a psychic, huh? Well, tell me what I'm thinking. They always would make me laugh. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. I might be able to give you from the other side, but I also don't know the freaking lottery numbers or, any of these other things. So
yeah, I get that question a lot. What are the winning lottery numbers? I'm like, really? Do you not think that, if it was that precise?
If we knew those, we would be millionaires and, we would have won the lottery.
Absolutely.
It does not work that way. It is also not, your abilities are not supposed to be used for financial gain or personal gain. And
I absolutely agree.
Yeah. And, I have this, this discussion with many psychics. Because, it's become very, very popular now for everybody to say they're a psychic and then go set up a website or start saying, I'll do Skype readings and things like that for people. And, when I talk to them, I really say, you understand, like, you're helping people, but you're not supposed to get any personal gain from this. And they'll say, well, it's no different than if you were, a contractor or anything like that. When times change, you have to use what skills and abilities you have to, live. And in a way, I guess the mentality of that I get. But for me and for so many true psychics that have, really gone through it, I really don't find too many of those people that would even consider, charging people for helping them, because they are really just about helping, and caring about people.
I think, I don't know, just personally, I feel it just discredits what I do. Now, I get way back in the day, and it makes me think of the story of my great-grandmother, who, again, sometimes I think maybe I got something from her, I don't know. We're talking 1800s here. She apparently was like the town, the small village, I guess you'd call them the tea leaf reader. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's how she made her money. She was popping out all these kids, which she really didn't take care of half of them, but that's how she made her money. But again, back then, what was a woman to do? That makes sense. But these days, I don't know. I can't. I just feel like it would discredit anything, and it's not like, I don't know, to me it's not like I'm working that hard at doing that.
Right.
Or whatever comes to me. I mean, to me it's not like if you're a singer and, you're really working on this talent. I mean, is it a talent? In a way, yes. Mm-hmm. But I just don't feel it's the same thing, and I feel that it's, you're talking about something spiritual, something we can't see. I just feel that you're kind of messing with the powers that be if you start charging money for it. I don't know. I have had this discussion with a few people that I know do charge, and it's kind of like, little couple arguments. I'm like, I just don't think it's right in this day and age. And personally, I don't know. I don't think I couldn't take someone as seriously if I had to pay them, I don't know, whatever, $20, $30 an hour, just for a psychic reading. You know, someone who's a spiritual healer, that's different, you know, if they're really working to help you, but just as a psychic, I don't know. I mean, you know, like, as far as, like, telling someone's future, I mean, just personally speaking, I may get clippets of, I see something that's going to happen to somebody, and sometimes, all depending on who it is and their energy, I can know something like, you know, geez, don't get in that car tomorrow because, you know, I just saw something that was going to happen to you. But, and again, sometimes it's just like, but it's not written in stone.
Right.
So I don't know. So to charge someone for that, I don't know. That's
Yeah, and I feel the same way. I mean, to each their own. I mean, I don't, you know, feel like I, you know, am anybody to be judging anybody else or what they do, or, you know, if they need the money that badly, if they need to help them, you know, absolutely do what you need to do. Because being a single mother myself, you know, I struggle and, you know, go through difficulties, and so, like, I get it. It's just for me, I have never charged for anything that I do. Nothing. No, I mean, I lecture all over the U.S., I do events, I do, you know, private readings, I mean, mentor, all the things I do, I've never taken a dime for. And I think that when people do, I mean, it then does cause you a whole other chance of other issues coming up, because some people will say, well, you know, that when you do things for free, people will kind of take advantage of you, and that is true. You know, when people say they want to be your best friend, and you get like 5,000 emails and messages a day, you know, and they want to know every move to make and and, you know, like when you can't do that, you know, or you can't get back to them quick enough, then they'll, you know, get very, very upset. So they say that, you know, when you do put a price on your readings, there's a value to it. And so I do, like, see that. But again, you know, like, the information is not mine. All I am is relaying the information. And when you start taking money, when you start taking money, you know, if say you give a reading, a lot of times, you know, we'll get information and it'll be right on. There could be other times where you, like, if I don't like doing gallery readings or group readings because I pick up on so much that I may be reading, and something for somebody else that was meant for somebody else might bleed through, and I give the information, and I could be right on everything else. I could validate everything else, but this one thing, you know, either might not be meant for that person, or it may not have happened yet, because a lot of times people think that what we get is always something that has happened in the past, information that's happened in the past. A lot of times I get information that will happen in the future, but it's not like they're telling me, like, hey, you know, let this person know that in 6 months it's going to happen. You know, it's just information, and it's not for us. So it never really makes any sense to me. That's why we hope that, you know, the people that are there can validate it. But again, you know, it's like if you say something that doesn't resonate with somebody, and they've paid money, then they feel like they haven't got their money's worth. And one person, you know, giving you a bad review when you're paid for your readings can be very detrimental to your reputation. So, you know, when people aren't charging, you know, it's like, you know, okay, if you are happy with the reading, so be it. If you're not, you know, you're not out anything, you know, go find somebody else.
Exactly.
But, you know, so for the listeners, again, you know, you can see that, you know, even though all of our stories are individual and different, there are very many similarities between all of us. And many of us have gone through very similar situations or had things happen. And I always think that it is so beneficial to share this information, because I can remember, you know, just feeling like I was so alone. Like I would never be able to find friendships or relationships where people could understand me. I was always this weird girl, you know. It was like, but again, I was very outgoing, but I didn't, like, trust too many people because, you know, again, I would think they were my friends, and then as soon as I told them that I could see spirits or this was going on or tell them, it would freak them out, and then, you know, they would tell everybody I was a witch or I was, you know, a devil worshiper, and, you know, it was just the craziest stuff. So, you know, you started to become very, you know, apprehensive about people and telling people. So, you know, like I said, you kind of live two lives. You live your reality, and then you kind of have to live in the reality of everybody else, and you have to kind of keep those two things separate. So to be able now to connect with so many people with similar experiences, able to share, educate, you know, a lot of times I'll get questions, you know, of things that people are going through and that they don't understand, even like with the elf thing that you were talking about. And I love to be able to use all of my experiences and things I've learned over the last 48 years and pass that on to help.
Absolutely.
I think it's really important for everybody. Let's get back to when you're growing up, you know, again. So did you ever encounter a time where, you know, that you became under attack or maybe you were oppressed or anything like that?
Yeah, when I was a teenager, another thing that really, plagued me, I guess, was the ability to read people's minds. And I no matter who I met, I mean, yes, there would be a rare person that I would get nothing off of. But I'd say 80% of the people I met, you know, other adults, other teens, whatever, I knew, I mean, not like every single second, but I knew what they were thinking. I could hear it, like, in my own head. And it affected me so badly because, you know, so much of it was negative, that, you know, I would get that depression off of people, or I would, you know, it was really very disheartening, especially when you're a teen, because everything is so dramatic anyway, that, I mean, you know, I ended up with getting anorexia, which, you know, yeah, well, wouldn't mind a touch of that now, but just kidding. But I was very, you know, tried to, you know, commit suicide as a teen, anorexic. I literally was starving myself down to nothing because, you know, my parents were like, you know, again, what's wrong with her? What can we do? And, you know, I try to explain myself, well, you know, but, you know, I would just come out. I know what people are thinking. I can hear what they're thinking, and it's not good. And it was just like I was met with, you know, what the hell's wrong with you? So I think I took that out on myself physically.
Yes. I would discover myself, so I understand that. I truly do. I mean, we try to kind of find a way to cope. And unfortunately, when we're dealing with things that nobody else believes is going on, we're trying to rationalize it, or we don't understand what's going on, and we tend to then think there's something wrong with us.
Right, and I firmly believe there was, and I think, you know, starving yourself or harming yourself was a way, it was something I could control. I couldn't control, you know, knowing what other people were thinking, and it, unfortunately, and this is another thing I've wondered, it's like, why has it's always tended to be more on the negative side? And again, maybe it's just me, maybe it was how I perceived it. As I got to be in my 20s, and, you know, it kind of became a benefit because I had, you know, when I was out there dating, my butt was saved many a time because I knew what was going on. I mean, you know, yes, you have women's intuition, but this was, you know, if I was seeing someone, I could and I was sitting next to them on a couch, let's say. I knew what they were thinking. One guy in particular, I could hear him, like a regular conversation, and he was thinking, oh, man, I hope she doesn't find out what I'm doing with, and then the woman's name, and then he was imagining what she was wearing, and I was seeing this, and, so I brought this up to him, and, I still, even in my 20s, he literally started throwing my stuff out, what's wrong with you? You're a freak, and I thought, oh my God, isn't this ever going to stop? So, and again, even in my 20s, it was still almost punishing yourself for doing something that I couldn't help. I actually ended up within the last year with an attachment, and I had never, or at least wasn't this bad before. And I went to a very, active place, and within the last year, didn't even, I don't know, I got a little cocky, I guess, and I'm like, oh, I'm fine, I don't need to protect myself. So I went in and had some really intense experiences. For me, how it particularly works is I almost kind of like become what that person was or what they were feeling, and it latched on to me, a male and a female. I left the place thinking, oh, okay, well, wow, I had these really intense experiences. Came home, and my life changed a lot. My behavior changed. I started doing things that I shouldn't be doing. And again, some of it's, kind of intense and personal, so I won't go into, too many details. But actually, just this past Christmas, it got so bad that, a couple of my family members were really worried because I literally was acting like a different person. And, I talked to the spiritualist healer out in Mexico who's, like, really, really great. And, she really confirmed what I kind of already knew anyway. And it was like I was doing what that spirit that was attached to me, I was doing what they wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And they weren't good things. Right? And it's really been a struggle the last few months trying to decipher between who I am and these attachments. I mean, I kind of thought I got rid of them, but I don't know, lately it's been like rearing its ugly head again. And, there was a time when I thought, okay, attachments, I believe in it, but until you actually experience it, it's like really scary. Because it's like, wow, yeah. I literally I'm doing things that I should not be doing, and total different behavior, and, it's been really terrifying. But anyway, so I warn people, like, don't get cocky about it, and you really, attachments are real. But oh, absolutely. Back to when I was a teenager, there's just, there's so many things, the self-loathing, but I did end up finding a very small group of, female friends that accepted it and, thought it was cool, and, it really benefited them too, because, I would always know, don't do this, don't do that. So it definitely had its benefits, but it was really difficult.
Right. Yeah, and it definitely is, and it's something that, again, how many psychics growing up, in you know, in the 60s, 70s, even the 80s or 90s. How many people, you know, even understood any of this to even know that they needed to protect themselves? I mean, again, both you and I went to, you know, Catholic schools and, you know, things like that, you know, so, I mean, I prayed all the time. I did everything I was supposed to do, thinking that, you know, I would be safe, and even that didn't keep me safe. So a lot of times people don't even understand how important protection is. And again, many of us growing up, and for people who are out there that, you know, did grow up in the 60s or the 70s, even the 80s, you know, how many of us, even if we experience, you know, seeing things, one of the big things I got as I got to be a teenager is that if I did tell anybody in my circles that, you know, I was a psychic, the whole Ouija board thing would come in because they would want to test me. And they would say, okay, we're going to do the Ouija board, and you're going to see, you know, you're going to try to connect with the spirit in the room, and then we're going to ask questions. We want you to give the answer first, and then we'll see what we get on the board. Now, I always had a bad feeling about Ouija boards. I never had a good one. You know, anybody who's a psychic knows absolutely that's you know, something to stay away from. It is not a game. It is not, you know, it is very real, and some really bad things can happen using it. But just about everybody I knew, all of our friends, and everybody's parents had these damn Ouija boards in their closet, along with all the other games.
Oh, yeah.
So many people would go in and do that. And I'll tell you, you know, I did that, and that was when I actually got my attachment. And as I said, I was already a cutter, you know, just to deal with life in general. And I had all kinds of horrific things happen to me through life. And, you know, it tried to convince me to take my own life, even tried to manipulate me and help, you know, make me believe that, you know, this thing could do it, you know, to me. And I finally kind of went up against it. And at one point he whispered in my ear, after literally taking control of my body and making me cut my wrist, he whispered in my ear and told me to just push the razor blade a little bit harder and it would all be over. And it was something about that right at that moment, I realized that because of the fact I have free will, that he couldn't hurt me. He had to convince me to hurt myself.
Right.
So they do look for a lot of, you know, psychics and people with abilities do become a very big target to these negative entities because of the fact that a lot of times we don't understand all this. A lot of times we do have very traumatic childhoods and experiences. There isn't a lot of support and help where you can turn to and understand what's going on. So there's a lot of, you know, depression and things that people go through. And sometimes it's just so bad, you know, because you feel like you're dealing with this all alone. And I don't know about you, but I mean, even growing up, I had seen people who had been committed into mental institutions for telling, you know, doctors or people around them that they could, you know, see and hear spirits. I had seen mothers lose their children and have the children removed from the home. So it is something that scares the hell out of you and would make sure that you don't really talk to anybody about this stuff too, which again isolates you, makes you more depressed, you know. So they kind of, you know, thrive on us. So I am very glad that the times have changed where there is information out there. There are people that they can turn to learn how to do this. I think that it's very kind of reckless right now with the amount of investigators that we have popping up in the world and going out to investigate, especially when they're using these television shows as their training. So they see Zach on, you know, Ghost Adventures, and he's, you know, yelling and cussing and provoking all these spirits, and then you get these dumbasses that see this stuff on TV and they want to go and do it, you know, and then all of a sudden they get attacked, and they're like, or they get an attachment, and they're like, oh my God, you know, then they're all freaked out and become a client. So,
but I don't think people realize, and again, it really wasn't until recently that I really understood this. that when people do that, you know, whether you're the biggest non-believer, it has nothing to do with whether you are or not. If you go into a place and your intentions are to try to contact something, you open that doorway. And for instance, my belief, did I have that experience with a Ouija board? Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, some really intense one. But, and I say, this is just my opinion, I don't think it's the Ouija board itself, it's the intention you put behind it.
Right.
Because I do believe whether it's the Ouija board, another thing, again, this is just a personal belief. You can use you can use a mirror to do that. If you go in anywhere and you put intention behind trying to contact something, you know, there's a really good chance that you're going to get something out of it. And it's not going to happen right away. You know, you can go home and, you know, your behavior starts changing. You start, you know, doing things differently. You know, I think more people have that happen to them and they don't realize it. Right,
right. And it's a tool. They're tools, like
that
pendulum.
Tools. I mean, you can use anything for a tool, really.
Right. They have pendulums. They have dowsing rods. I mean, there's all kinds of things. And, you know, people who know how to use them and know how to use them correctly, again, it's just like any other tool that people use. But, you know, again, the problem is that not knowing how to use them. And especially Ouija boards because, you know, your intent is to open a portal so that something can come through. The problem is that you don't know what's coming through. And many times things come through, they're very dark. And again, these things know us better than we know ourselves. They know everything about us. They know what upsets us. They know what we've gone through. So if we're saying we're going to do the Ouija board so we can talk to Uncle Joe, you know,
you're not going to talk to Uncle Joe.
You're right.
People.
Absolutely.
Uncle Joe, sweet Uncle Joe, is not going to come through a Ouija board.
No.
And you know, you're not talking to him. You're talking to something, bad energy, an evil spirit, whatever you want to call it. That's what you're talking to. And this is what I try to lecture some people on that will listen. You know, if you ask it a question, like, you know, how old am I going to be on my next birthday? I mean, and it answers you, you know, you don't begin all excited thinking, oh, yeah, you know, it's my great-grandmother. It's, you know, if you've opened yourself up, it's you know, almost it's like reading your mind. It's not a good thing.
Right, absolutely. And it will trick you. And then the thing is that most people, when they're on a Ouija board, at some point, you know, like, they'll start interacting, and it'll be very simple yes or no answers or something, and then out of the blue, like, usually something crazy will be said, you know, a comment will be said, you know, on the Ouija board, and it will freak people out. And then they just want to close it and put it back in the box and stick it away, and they don't want to deal with it anymore, and they have not closed down the door that they have opened. So there you go. You know, it's open, and, you know, I think for the darker things, I mean, boy, what a crazy, you know, type of thing to create to help them. And, you know, and they don't even know it because we have been brainwashed to think that these things are just games. They're just toys. They don't do anything, you know, because none of this stuff supposedly really existed back in the day. But it even infuriates me even more because I talked about this before on my shows. They have revamped the whole Ouija board thing. And now, through Toys R Us, they are targeting very young children. For the boys, they have a glow-in-the-dark Ouija board. And for the girls, they have, and for the girls, they have a Barbie Ouija board.
Oh, my God. I had no idea.
Absolutely. They sell them. You can, all you got to do is Google them online, and it'll bring them up. And it just so disgusted me. I actually wrote an email to the Treasurer's Corporation because I think it's just absolutely reckless to target children because you see a child, just like with anything, they see it and it's got Barbie on it or it's glow in the dark. It's cool. They want it. And then you get these stupid parents that don't know any better. They're like, oh, yeah, we had when we were young. You know, they're just gaming. It's not real. And next thing you know, you've got something in your home. You know, it might be affecting your children. And, of course, children don't understand all this, so they're even a bigger target for these things. So it just infuriates me beyond belief that they revamped and, you know, the whole thing. They put out this big, you know, promotional thing, the makers saying, oh, we've revamped it, you know, look at our new and improved Ouija boards. And it's just sickening me. In fact, I'll post it on my Paranormal Connections and my personal Facebook page tonight after the show. And, you know, I'd love for the listeners to chime in on what their thoughts are on the whole revamping, giving the Ouija board a new look. You know, I mean, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still going to be a pig. So, you know, I mean, think about it. And, you know, I think, what in the world are these people thinking that, you know, the parents go out and buy these things for their kids? And they've been selling like hotcakes. That's the crazy part about it.
That's crazy. I mean, you know, I can see some of there are probably a lot of the parents, if he's not believing in paranormal anything, I get that, thinking it is just a game. But that's the scary part. I recently, so a few months ago, my doctor, I went for regular, you know, doctor's checkup, and, you know, this is, she's an MD, so, you know, she's very of a scientific mind, not of a paranormal, spiritual, you know, frame of mind. And so during, you know, she's known me for years, so during my appointment, I could see, she wanted to ask me something, and she says, can I ask you a question? I'm like, yeah. She goes, well, I know this is really crazy, but would you come to my house because my daughter, who's the same age as my daughter, she's been doing things in the mirror. Because the girls at school told her, you know, the Bloody Mary thing, and then there's some other thing that they were doing. And so basically, they were trying to, it's like a new fad, and again, I understand that we, you know, as kids, you all, you know, whether it's the Bloody Mary thing, which, do I think there's much to that? No, but I mean, they're still putting the intention behind it, and she goes, and ever since she's been doing this stuff in the mirror, stuff is going on in my house, so I went there, and, you know, I cleansed first I investigated, then I cleansed the house, and, you know, thank God she hasn't had any trouble, but she's like, I didn't think there was any such thing as this stuff. She's, you know, but she's like, since she started doing the stuff in the mirror, she's like, something's going on. She goes, and I'm really scared, and I've never been a believer in this. She goes, you know, and my husband would say, oh, yeah, go ahead and do it. It's just all in fun.
Right.
She goes, now I'm really starting to rethink it because something isn't right. And, you know, sure enough, you know, there was definitely something, it wasn't horribly bad, but there was definitely something going on in the house. I explained to her the whole, you know, the mirror thing, the Ouija board, and she's like, you know, a year ago, if you had told me this, I would have said you were crazy. She's like, but now that it's actually happened, and, you know, that she's tampered with the mirror, and I said, and I said, I'm not saying that, you know, you look in the mirror every day, you can talk to yourself, whatever you want. I said, but her intentions behind it were opening something.
Right, right. Yeah, and actually, you know, mirrors have always been very used in opening portals. And a lot of times they'll go to homes where they'll have a lot of mirrors in their home, directly facing each other. And, they're using it like a superhighway. So it's a lot of things, again, that people don't know. And at the beginning, I think that I really wanted people to understand, like I just so wanted them to believe and realize that this is real. Mm-hmm. But over the years, I started to understand myself that it is something when you are brainwashed to believe one thing, which is that this stuff doesn't exist, okay? And then all of a sudden, they have a personal experience. That personal experience is the only thing that's going to change their mind. And until they have it, you can talk until the cow will go home. They are not going to listen to you. But once they have their own personal experience, it not only changes what they believe in, but it really changes everything. Because it starts like, wow, well, if this is, I was told all the time that this didn't exist, and it really does, what other things have I been told that don't exist actually may? So it is very profound. And I'm really seeing a shift, and you may as well. But to be absolutely honest, since the paranormal shows started coming out, and we started getting a lot more people, novices going out into the field and, investigating and taking on private clients and all these things, there's been an increase in darker cases.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And, I do believe that, having so many people out there, trying to communicate and trying to bring forward things, and I think that it is opening and unlocking things that are shifting. And it is very concerning to me because, back in the day, I might have had, I don't know, in my whole career, maybe a handful of cases that were truly something pretty bad and were concerning. Mm-hmm. Most of them were pretty easy, residual hauntings, people with unfinished business, wanted to give a message, simple things, and they would cross over and move on, or they didn't know. But now we're starting to see a whole bunch of things change. And just about, I would say, the majority of the cases that we get seem to be very dark. And, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that all of the people interacting, do you think that, these are opening?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, again, my theory is like, you have all these shows, and it does. It looks like fun to go and provoke, or even if you're not provoking, but to play around with what you can't see.
Right.
And when, I think when people are doing this, they're bringing in things that aren't okay. I mean, I think really 30% of the time you're really only getting something positive, like, your dead grandfather, or, someone that you want to talk to. But not to harp on, the ghost adventures, but I think when they show them provoking anything, it's got people on this, giant bandwagon to tamper with something that they don't know what they're tampering with.
Right.
And,
absolutely.
I also feel like it's a combination of, there's so much, how do I want to say it? To me, there's so much anger and hatred and bad in this world now. I think it's almost, they kind of like feed off of each other. I mean, I know that, to me, there's open doorways in this world now with just how people are in general, that there's definitely way more negativity.
Oh, absolutely. We've got more depression. We've got, people's finances. People are losing their jobs, homeless. I mean, it's almost like a perfect storm, for
it is.
The dark side.
It is. And just speaking for myself, I feel like from when I was 20 as opposed to now, there's definitely a shift in energy in the world, and I feel, is it a lot of it man-made? Yes, but a lot of it has to be paranormal, whether it's man-made energy or whether we've, opened the doors for other stuff to come through.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a generalization, but, I really do believe that. And again, with all the paranormal stuff going on, you have people, I think anyone thinks that they can be a paranormal investigator. Not saying that you can't. I mean, it is not an exact science.
Right.
It is interesting, and but you just have to do it the right way. If you're gonna open something, or you're gonna put intentions behind something, you have to be able to make sure you know how to deal with it. So yeah, I definitely feel that, and again, I have a lot of people, if I've gone to their home, or, I don't want to use the word counsel but chatted with them, hush hush, there's definitely more bad stuff, as opposed to, geez, I think my I want to just contact my dad or something. To me, it's very rare that you get that. I get that anymore.
Right.
It's always, can you come to my home? There's something going on. It's definitely way more negative.
Well, are you also seeing an increase in children being affected?
Yeah, and I often wonder, I used to work at a daycare with my friend, and I often wondered, you see so many kids with autism, and I kind of feel that, or something along that lines, and I often feel like if that triggers that little extra sensory, or it makes kids a little bit more susceptible because they do have, that weakness, so to speak.
Well, and autistic children are probably, some of the most gifted and connected children that I know, especially even whether it might be autism or they are deemed, mentally retarded or any kind of disability, I used to work with disabled children, and being a nurse, I dealt with it a lot too. And they almost will always tell you stories about the people, the spirits and stuff that they see, and their IQs are crazy, high. But because of the fact that they've been labeled, that they've got a disability, they're not believed. But I would tell you, these kids are so connected, and it's so sad for me to see, them being discounted, and, even more so than a regular child talking about it. When a regular child talks about it, most people would say, oh, they've got an imaginary friend.
Yeah. That's the one that killed me, the whole imaginary friend.
Not so imaginary.
Yeah, especially these days. I'm like, oh, man, it's not an imaginary. Not saying it's not. I'm sure sometimes it is, but so often I'm like, oh, that's not an imaginary friend.
Yeah. And
I want to look into that.
Yeah. And, talking, in Czech, two of my team members, their son was born with Down syndrome. And again, very, very gifted. Oh, and it's like these children are so amazing. I mean, they're just so amazingly gifted. And if people would just take the time to listen to them, so much information is given to them. but because of, them being tagged with this disability, nobody listens. And I'll tell you, I've gotten so much information from, children with disabilities and things like that. And boy, if people would just listen, they would learn so much, so much. It is absolutely, crazy. Some of the most loving and kids out there. And, I feel sad because it's like I know how it was to not be believed. And, so to be them, it's 10 times, harder. What about, obviously, people pay all kinds of money to go out and investigate haunted locations. I want to get your opinion on this because to me, I feel it's really stupid. There are spirits everywhere. And I always tell people, why the hell are you going to go and pay this exorbitant amount of money to go to an abandoned, location where you might fall through the floor or, teammates get hurt just to try to get some activity? Like, you can go anywhere. Like, you can do it at your own house. I don't recommend it, but I mean, anywhere you go, there is activity, there are spirits. They don't just contain themselves to the old, rickety, abandoned houses that look scary.
Yeah. I mean, I admit I'm one of those people. I think I do it because I kind of feel like if I have a period of time where I'm not, nobody seeks my help at all, or I don't have the opportunity to go to, any location. I mean, I personally would rather do, like, someone's home. That, to me, is a high. Like, I now almost get a high off of it now that I've accepted what I do. But I admit, a few times I have paid for, in fact, last weekend I went to Rolling Hills Asylum. And once in a while, I agree. I was thinking to myself, geez, and I've had people say, well, why are you paying money to go to this? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I think part of it is for the historical value because it is so interesting to know that there was so much that happened in one targeted area. And I notice that I tend to do it when I'm not really, no one's really calling on me, and I'm not getting the opportunities to go to, anybody else's house to investigate. I mean, if I had my way, I'd be doing it every single weekend.
Right. But we also have a bad thing, though, that with so many people who are very new to the field, they go to these abandoned places or whatever, and then that kind of gets old. So they decide, it would be much more fun to have a private client. And, again, I feel this is kind of reckless because do we need researchers and investigators in the field? Absolutely, 100%. But, it really takes a lot of knowledge and training to go in and take on private clients because myself and my group, I mean, I've had many times when I've consulted on, for other groups or for clients that have had 2 or 3 teams come in. I actually had a client one time that I was the third person that had come into their home. And she said, the first ones, they came in and stuff, and they basically told her that she needed to, since their blessing didn't work, that she needed to go and be baptized in a baptismal bath. Like she had to go to, and it was very specific. They told her to go to a Southern Baptist church where they had the submersion tub, and that they had to be fully submerged and be baptized again. And they needed to have the congregation then come to the house and sing hymnals and do a blessing. That was the only right. And they were different religions. I think they were like Buddhists or something. So obviously that really was not going to happen. Then second of all, they had a second team come in, and they were provoking or whatever. Something happened to one of the team members, and they all ran out of the house. And they said, yeah, you've got activity. You definitely got ghosts here. And they said, okay, well, what do we do now? And they said, well, you're going to have to call somebody else because we don't do anything other than validate if you have something here or not. And I'm thinking, what the hell? Like, really? I mean, like, when you're going to take on clients, like, you, number one, need to know how to, you know, at the very beginning, like, the question, it starts from the questionnaire. You know, our questionnaire is literally 5 pages long. It goes into their medical background, their psychological background. Like, it literally is just about anything and everything that you'd want to know is on and in there. And it's very important to have all of the facts and information. So we do, you know, all of that. But you also need to know, you know, how to protect yourself and the family, what to do, you know, the do's and don'ts, what will set off your, you know, your electronic equipment and give you false positives, you know, all kinds of different things. We've had cases where, you know, people have had smart meters in their home, or there was an old homes where the electrical wiring, you know, was like going through the wall at the head of their bed, and they were having hallucinations because, you know, the EMF ranges were so high. Even old microwaves put out, you know, very, very high frequencies that can cause a lot of things. So not everything is paranormal. But, you know, you definitely need to know all of this and be able to keep your composure. You can't go to a frightful client, get scared yourself, and go running out of the house. Like, how the hell are they supposed to feel confident, right? And then you're going to go and try to call somebody else. Like, I mean, I said this in another show, and I'm really thinking about truly trying to do this. But I had said, you know, I don't know if on the West Coast, I mean, on the East Coast, people know about Angie's List, but, you know, it was a lady was having such a hard time finding, like, you know, contractors and things like that were reputable. So she started the site where, you know, people could go in and see reviews about, you know, and so people would find them. Because right now, it's like, depending on how smart you are, I mean, all you need is a couple friends, be able to make a Facebook page. And so where before there might have been, I think there were like 3 in my area in California groups, there are now over 3,000.
Yeah, there must be.
Right. So how in the world do you know who is experienced? And the thing is that they lie. People will say that they've got, I saw this the other day. There was a group of young teens. Well, not teens, but they were like, I think they were like 19 through 21. And they had created a group. And they said they had 25 years experience on their site. And I'm thinking, like, how in the world do you have that when you're not even 25 years old? Like, you don't take everybody's experience and then combine that number to say, you know, then that's what you have. And again, it's like the client has no idea on if the information that is posted is true or not. I've said this many, many times, too, here in our own town. I was driving home last summer, and a van was coming up behind me on the freeway, and it looked like a painter, plumber's, one of those kind of vans. And as it, you know, got next to me, I realized it had like a ghost on it. Like, had ladders on the side and everything, and it had, you know, those car wraps where they put the advertisement on. And I thought it was like a plumber. And it's, you know, I'm not going to say the name of the group, but it was something, you know, paranormal. And it said, you know, where all others fail, you know, we can help get rid of, you know, the spirits. And it said licensed, bonded, and insured. And I was, like, blown away because I thought, what the hell? Like, when did investigation groups become licensed, bonded, and insured? Like, but for a normal person, yeah.
How can you become licensed and bonded? I mean, again, it's not an exact science. I mean, you can't, you know, that just doesn't make any sense unless you have an actual operation, which, you know, no one has ever caught, coming out, dancing in front of the you know, your high-tech equipment saying, yeah, I'm here. I mean, it's just, you can't put a license or bond on that.
Right. And that's exactly the thing. You know, having people put this out, you know, that's like what a contractor would do, right? Because this person's like, okay, you know, that they've got all this backing, so if they go and screw up the job, then it's, you know, covered. None of this exists in the paranormal world. Like, you can't be licensed, bonded, and insured. Like, and you can buy event insurance, and many more people now are requiring it, but, you know, you're not licensed and bonded. It's not that type of field, and to put that out is false advertisement anyway. But again, we're talking about the regular public that they really don't know anything about these teams, and so they have to go at face value. And so I've asked many people, like, how did you find a group? And they'll say, I went online and I Googled paranormal groups in my area, and that there's hundreds of them. So they basically would just go to their pages or their websites and see who looked the best. Right. And, you know, and it's blown up on so many people, you know, because we've got all these groups thinking that they should now go into private homes. And, you know, the problem I have is the fact that if you don't know what you're doing, you know, these families, by the time that they call a paranormal team, have already been traumatized enough. This is not new activity. They've probably been dealing with it for quite a while. And, you know, their last resort is to call in a paranormal group because they don't want their neighbors or their friends to think they're crazy. So, you know, to call in somebody and then have them end up making it worse than it was is, I think, one of the worst things you could do. And it really bothers me, as I said. If people want to go out and investigate, great. Go to these locations, try to get photos, try to get EVPs, all these things, but you do not need to take on private clients. And it's detrimental to the client, and it also can be very detrimental to the team that is going out to investigate, your teammates, because if, again, you do not know the correct procedures on what to do, you are putting everybody at risk. You may end up getting an attachment. Somebody might get hurt. You know, things can happen down the line. I mean, it's just, there's so many things that could go wrong that I just wish there was some kind of, I guess, monitoring, or I eventually think that's where it's going to go. I think that people will be able to be, like, licensed or things like that to try to separate all of this from the enthusiasts from the actual researchers, and some kind of moderation. But I also kind of worry about that because we get people that are, when you get other people judging other people, that can be chaotic all in itself. So, but I do think that we need to do something to kind of regulate all of this because it is kind of crazy and there's really nobody watching any of this. We're finding a lot of teens, you know, wanting to tear each other up.
Yeah, I hear a lot about that lately.
Yeah, it's like it's all the time.
It blows my mind.
Yeah, you know, and it really bothers me when people say there's no such thing as paranormal unity, because I have to completely disagree. I mean, yes, there are always going to be people out there that cannot work well with others, and that's, you know, that's fine. But I will tell you, you know, just even in my group, I mean, we have like 1,700, you know, people in my group, and they're all investigators. And I work with, you know, hundreds of other teams. You know, I send them clients. I consult with them. They'll, you know, if I have a question, they'll consult for me. We work together. We network together. It's amazing. But, you know, you get these other people out there that they feel that they are somewhat better than everybody else, and then they will then go out and start, you know, if you post some, you know, say a picture or something like that. That's a big thing with a lot of new groups. You know, they want to post all the evidence that they capture and everything. Well, you don't realize that when you post this, you are now opening the door to everybody's opinion, and good and bad. Everybody sees something different. Everybody thinks, oh, you know, but you'll get a lot of people that then they'll start trying to pick and tear apart your picture. And God forbid that you're new and you capture something like the we'll say the notorious or picture, or, the bubble picture, and, a team will say, oh my God, look at all the spirits. But it was actually, the dust or the dirt particles, taken at night with a flash, but they don't know any better. But you post something like that, the paranormal world will tear you apart and try to discredit you. And, it's very, very sad. You also get a lot of paranormal bullying that goes on in the field. People have to remember that even in this field, for 1 minute somebody can like you, the next minute they don't like you, and they can post and say anything they want about you. Anything. There's no, there's nothing stopping them. They can say whatever they want. And, I've had, people put stuff out about me saying that, I'm on the run, I've killed people, I'm a serial killer, the FBI is looking for me, just anything and ever, it's like, I feel like, I should have my own reality series, of America's Most Wanted, that's still in the public eye, they can't find me. But, there are people that don't know me. People who do know me, they don't listen to this crap. If that was really the case, I sure as hell wouldn't be all over the United States speaking at conferences. I think the FBI would never find me. You think?
Exactly.
But it's always interesting. And, when people don't know you and somebody posts something like that, people are like, I don't want somebody like that on my friends list. I've had people contact me and they have a problem with somebody else. And they'll say, I see that you've got the so-and-so on your friends list, and I don't like that person, so I need you to delete them. I'm like, what? I'm not one of those people that does what other people tell me. I do my own research. If you're not a good person, yes, I'll absolutely make sure I get rid of you. But if you're a good person, again, I do my research. I don't just listen to what people say, because people will say anything, for all kinds of reasons. And, do a little research and find out, there's nothing, they haven't done anything, it's just they pissed off the wrong person, and it starts. And with people, nowadays that have so much idle time on their hands and no life, it's like they can make it their, the whole focus to try to do whatever they can, to hurt whoever they're mad at. So, right. It's definitely, I don't know, for it to be a field that I love absolutely so much. I can remember, 15, even 20 years ago, stating, dang, I wish there were more people that investigated and understood the paranormal, because I couldn't even get anybody to investigate with me. When I had to go do cases, people think I was truly crazy. Again, they think that I was going to go do some hocus pocus, witchcraft, magic, whatever you want.
Start drawing pentagrams and
are you kidding me? I'm not going to go participate in that crap, And nowadays it's like, geez, I've got people who contact me all the time, and a waiting list of people who want to join my group or to come on investigations with us that are outside of my team. So you got to be careful what you wish for, I guess. But I definitely think that there needs to be some changes, because we are dealing with, something that nobody's really used to dealing with. We went from thinking none of this existed to the complete polar opposite. Now people are starting to talk about it and share their stories, and, we've got this overload. And so, there's got to be kind of that happy medium, I guess, where we can find. But it's definitely crazy.
To play, devil's advocate for a minute, something you said, I agree that something should be done, because now, and again, to me personally, it's insane. My life went from hiding it to now it's the total opposite. So for me, it's so weird. But I think that with so many people starting teams, I think it's a catch-22, because do I think, in my personal opinion, 75% of them are legit serious people? I think so. I mean, and again, it's hard because it's not an exact science, so, like I go in it just really, I've never done all the fancy equipment. I just never had to.
Right.
But again, I understand people need proof. They can't just go on my word. I can validate a lot of stuff, but I think that I'm trying to think of how to phrase this properly. I think it's great that, because I worked with some awesome people that weren't part of big teams, and, to me, I think they're more legit than, someone who, say, has a paranormal show, on TV or something. So I think it's a catch-22 as to how legit or how serious you should take different teams. I think I have a little bit more broader mind about it just because people tend to maybe scoff at me for what I do. And I think a lot of times, like, just for example, a few months ago, a very small team, they come with the technical stuff. I only come with what I do. We went in, and this particular family had already had, if I'm not mistaken, 2 different teams. I don't know who they were, but come in. And so we go there, and they had said, these other teams, kind of what you were saying, like, oh, you need to this and you need to that, and your house is haunted. We go in, and there was so much bad wiring in the basement. And that really ended up, now, again, speaking for myself, I went in, I walked up on the porch, I automatically saw a man drop, on the porch from a heart attack. I got my information, and long story short, this particular family ended up being, I said, there's no one here haunting this place, and a previous team had been terrified. I said, there's no one here haunting this place. The only thing that they've got going on is the young woman's father had passed the previous year. And she, you could see the signs around the house. There was medication hanging from, out in the open. And her father came to me and said, she's holding on to something that I can't quite cross over. So I'm insisting on this. And, as it turned out, she had her dad's ashes around her neck that she wore. Mm-hmm. And she was living her life, her and her mother, for this man who had passed away. And honestly, it was really that simple. It was faulty wiring, and the only thing haunting it was, the spirit of this man who was like, I don't feel like I can quite leave yet because they need to, she needs to let go.
Right.
And I just felt bad because I'm like, Jesus, these other teams have come in and your house is haunted, and, and I just really, just as a female, and because she was very much younger, just talked to her for a while. And, just passed on the message that what her father was telling me. And I felt like when we left, I felt like just a little bit of counseling or talking as a friend and a little bit of, psychic work. We really cleared up a problem where other people were telling her, Lord knows what you have in your house.
Right.
Right. And
there are people and everything.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I'm kind of torn. Like, all these people that go out and investigate, I think, are gung-ho and a little bit crazy. But at the same time, I kind of get it, because it's kind of cool that we're all so in tune with it nowadays.
Right.
That, we can, or I feel like I can help people with the backing of people with their technical equipment. And sometimes I feel absolutely worthless, because I'm like, they, as a psychic, and I'm sure you get this, you need backup as to what you're saying, because we can't, it's not a proof positive thing unless, which again, I've done several times, but again, you don't always do it. You give complete validation, and you know things that nobody else does.
Right.
I don't know. I guess I kind of see both sides to the whole team thing, but I have change the subject. But I had heard about some of the bullying that you had to have dealt with, and I was like, that's crazy, because, like, again, this isn't something that can be proven. It's not something that can be completely documented, so we're all kind of aimlessly wandering around, just, going on God's good graces, hoping that we can help people. But you can't say someone else is, doing something wrong, or your team is better, or your way is better, because there's just not enough, legitimate proof.
Right, and again, there's always two sides to everything. When the whole drama started with me, our team helped a couple for over a year. They were our clients, and I literally, spoke to the client every day, a few times a day, and it was a very long, drawn-out case. And they had some items that had some attachments to them, some very dark attachments to them. The activity got so bad at the house that they pleaded me and my team to remove them. And I did, and right before I removed them, they said that somebody had told them that, they were worth, $60,000 each, and, they wanted to try to sell them. And I felt like the information that they were getting was, basically they knew, these darker spirits knew that, they were going to be removed. So, what better than to convince two people struggling financially that they now found, two relics that don't even belong together, and there's nothing to back it up, but it was just a way to keep them. So they kept them for, quite a while, and of course the activity got worse. They didn't find anybody to buy them, and they were even wanting them just to be out of the house. And I, took them to try to get them placed at a university, but without any carbon dating testing on them to validate, anything, for educational purposes or value. They won't, they don't even want it. It's like a paperweight for them. If they don't have anything to validate that it's worth either, as far as history or educational purposes, they don't want to bother with it. And so I basically got stuck with it, because then they didn't want them back, because once they left, a lot of the activity stopped. But then it started at my house, so I was basically kind of stuck with it. And then, it was like I made arrangements to send them away, and we finally went to go, after the year, to go and finish the case, do the cleansing, and I mean, it was a crazy, they had all kinds of stuff going on there. But when we got there, as we left, and I was told by, somebody else in the field, really well respected, that, be ready, because, these things are going to try their damnedest to get back. They don't want it to be, gotten rid of. So it will not be strange for anybody to, for them to maybe call and want them back or something, and I happened to be driving up to this place, and it was like 3 hours away from me. And they called while we were driving, and they're like, hey, when you come up, we decided we want the, figurines back. Now, mind you, I had been trying to give these damn things back for over a year, and they wouldn't take them. But then all of a sudden they wanted them, and so I basically said I sent them off because I was expecting, something like this to happen. And then I felt bad for, fibbing, and so when I got there, I said, I want to be honest, I didn't send them off, but if you want them, I will send them back to you. But if that's the case, the team and myself are going to leave because it makes no sense to do the full cleansing. Like, I had tribal shamans with me and, the whole 9 yards. So I was like, if we do this cleansing and then you reintroduce these back into the home, it was pointless. So,
that must have been so frustrating.
Yeah, and so they were like, I gave them that option, and they said in front of my whole team, which was like 15 people, and they're like, no, we haven't been able to sell them, and we don't have the money to do the testing. As long as you can just find somewhere for them to go, that's all we need. And so I said, okay, that's fine. We did the cleansing. It was crazy. The guy was actually, I believe, oppressed, if not very close to being possessed. We saw some of the strangest shit that night that I still, is very vivid in my brain. And everything just couldn't sing enough praises for me and the team, that God had sent me their way and saved them and all this kind of stuff. And then 3 weeks later, they went on a vacation to Oregon, and they went into some shop that sells these kind of things, or these figurines, and they bought another one, and they told the shopkeeper about how they had these haunted ones. And so the guy offered him $100 for it. And so 3 weeks later, the guy, and his wife messaged me saying, yeah, well, we know that we told you that you could, get rid of them for us, but we've changed our mind again, and we want it back. And I was like, nope, I'm done. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. We're done. And they said, you either are going to give me your address so I can come get them, or we're going to tell the police and the world that you came into our house and stole them.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
And, I'm not going to lie, I got very upset. I thought, how dare you? I've been helping your family above and beyond for over a year. You've been playing these things, and now you're going to threaten my reputation to lie about me? Well, how about this? How about you take me to court, and we'll solve it there. And so, it kind of went from there. But again, it's like, you never know what kind of clients you're going to get. You never know how things are going to happen, but everything is a learning experience. Now we have protocols that we won't take anything from anybody without having them sign a release. We would try not to, take anything, period. But, it's like everybody said, I sold them, I was on the run with them, the police couldn't find me, the FBI couldn't find me, and, people were telling me, is this real, is this true? And I'm like, really? Like, you really think that I'm, I must be better than Osama bin Laden if that's the case, if I can, be this in the public and still nobody can find me, I'm like, right, the government definitely has my information, my address, everything, so, but, it is what it is. So, again, people in this field have to realize that there's so much more that comes with just going out and looking for things. There have been investigators that have gone out to locations they called, and people have portrayed themselves as clients, and when they've arrived, at the client's home, they have been, greeted with a gun.
Oh, my gosh.
Had people with psychiatric illnesses and, things like that call and try to manipulate to get people in. I just had somebody the other day that called a fellow investigator, a female, and wanted her to go over to do the initial consultation, but wanted her to come alone, and it had to be a female. So,
creepy.
Yeah. So, people don't think about any of these other things that you might encounter, and, you get stalkers, you get, it's crazy. So, for anybody out there, I definitely, as you said, we need people, but, educate yourself. learn about the field and don't take on clients and things like that until you really have some experience under your belt.
Mm-hmm.
But with that being said, we've got about 5 minutes left, so I want to be able to give you an opportunity if you have anything coming up, anything going on, how people can get a hold of you if they'd like to contact you.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm out in Massachusetts, so I actually am talking to DTM radio and about, trying my hand at, my own show. Yes, my majority of my life is, the paranormal, but also doing what I do, and the clients I see during the day as a nail tech. I've really, become the conversations we have, I give them readings, but we also talk about so many other facets of life that it's just been on my mind. It's like, it'd really be great to have a show where I have like a different topic.
Yeah.
I'd love to do the paranormal thing, but it's like, I feel like I have so much more to talk about. I've had fertility issues. I've adopted, two girls from China. I mean, and just from talking to so many clients, it'd be fun to, I thought have a radio show that kind of hit on everything.
I think it's a great idea. Maybe we'll have to talk. So I think that you're right on.
Yeah, and I thought, well, I'm working on that, and bless Tiffany, she thinks that I'm going to try my hand at it and see how that goes, and but I'm always up for anyone ever needs any kind of paranormal help from a psychic. Said I do not personally. I do not go in with all the fancy equipment. I just feel like I personally don't need that.
Well, you don't. But, don't. But that's the validation that goes along with it. If you do have a team, because a lot of times the client, we can give them a psychic so much more information than electronics can, but electronics validates what we're saying. So
I look at it more like what I do, more like counseling, and when I'm with someone, I can tell you, someone that's passed comes through, and I work best like that. And once you start doing a reading or something, you start getting into more aspects of life, especially with other women, and it's like you can really almost give an outsider's point of view and kind of guide people and help them. I just help them the best you can with a mixture of paranormal, what I get from being a psychic, and just what I get from being a female that's been through a lot of different things.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I always think I'm just, small pie peanuts compared to a lot of things going on these days. But then I think, what? Not to belittle myself, but at the same time, it's like I've been doing this my whole life.
Right.
So, one hand, no, I don't have a show. I don't do all that fancy stuff, but it's like, it's just recently I've started to give myself more credit and say, well, I can't help them on the bigger scale, but I can help them on a small personal scale.
Absolutely. And that's what's really important. Well, we've got less than a minute left, so again, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I heard so much about you. It was good to meet you.
Well, great. I mean, everybody in chat just loved the interview, so, that really makes me happy. I do want to let everybody know, thanks again for listening to the show. Next week we will have Anita Jo Intenzo, and she will be on talking about her new book. So make sure to check us out, and we will see you next Monday night. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.